All right, to continue. So just kind of give an example of one thing that happened. Okay, but one point I want to make is yes, I saw myself as the Messiah, but I never said that out loud. Like even when I showed my mom and dad the quadrant model, I was like, I'm the Messiah. I discovered the theory of everything. I was just like, hey Dad, I discovered the theory of everything. So for them to think I had schizophrenia was unfounded. It was stupid. But like I said, I was probably a little bit, you know, I was doing schizotypal stuff. Like I was constantly writing and stuff like that. So, but I never had schizophrenia. But so I'll just continue. So just to go on off of the way that the way I was such a leftist at that time. So one example was, I remember I was talking with one of my friends, or he was a teammate at UCSD. He was one of the black players on the team, and he was saying how, his dad was a pastor. His dad was a black pastor in Arizona, but he claimed that he was a black pastor, but he acted white, and that's why the white people liked him. And one thing he did was against was immigration, right? And I remember I didn't like that because I was like, because in my mind, because I was studying for my grandpa's like, transcend dualistic software. So I'm like, yeah, transcend dualistic software. So, borders are just imaginary and everything is one. There is no thing. Everything is one. But my grandpa would later teach me everything is one, but not everything's the same. And just for everyone mixing is not necessarily the flow. But I didn't know that at the time. So I'm like, how could a pastor be even say, that he acts like a white man? Doesn't he know that black and white are social constructions and there's no such thing? And, so I was like but in my mind, I'm like, I'm doing what my grandpa teaches. He says transcend dualistic software. And I don't believe in black. There is no black and white. There is no self. But ironically, like I said, I didn't really transcend dualistic software because I still saw myself as Jewish. And part of the reason why I wanted race mixing so much and something that really shaded and colored my beliefs was the notion that, I saw myself as Jewish and I wanted race mixing. I wanted the white race to go extinct pretty much. So, I remember this kid was like I said, he was actually half black. His dad was a pastor from Arizona and his mom was, I think, Mexican or white. But he was saying that, he felt that women, we're sitting and we were eating, and this was probably it was probably after I quit basketball. Or maybe it was right before, I forget, but we were sitting and we were eating, and I was with him and this kid named Jay. I was pretty sure, yes, after I quit basketball, because Jay quit too. And then the black kid was saying how he thought that women should be more subservient and be more submissive and stuff, right? And I looked at him and I was like, dude, that's what white, you're talking about women being more submissive and stuff. And because in my mind, I'm like, transcend dualistic software. My grandpa teaches that there is no self and there is no male or female. And, there's individual women who are smart and there's individual men who are smart, but there's individual women who are dumb and there's individual men who are dumb. And there's no such thing as, we should treat people as individuals and not, sex. Sex is a social construction, is a continuum. So I'm like, dude, to say all women should be subservient, because in my mind, like I said, I was studying the INTP and, the Myers-Briggs, and I'm like, yeah, there's some women who are INTPs and they shouldn't be submissive. They should be scientists. And there's some women who are SJs and they should be, more housekeepers. But same thing with SJ men and NT men. And yes, there might be a higher number of men who are NTs, but still there are women who are NTs. And those NT women should be philosophers and they should be professors, and the SJ men, they should be doctors or they should be firefighters. And so I was seeing things as I wanted to be like, treat people as individuals, but really I wanted race mixing because I really wanted to see that in terms of black people and white people too. I'm like, yeah, there's black people who are NTs and they should be doctors, but there's black people who are SPs and they should be basketball players, and there's white people who are NT or who are SPs and they should be basketball players. And you see what I'm saying? It's all about individuals, and we shouldn't separate based off of race because race is artificial social construction. That's why I want to see it, but really I wanted race mixing. So, and again, but I'm thinking I've transcended the ego. I transcended dualistic software like my grandpa taught, but I didn't realize, no, I didn't transcend dualistic software. I was still seeing things because I saw myself as Jewish. So my grandpa would say, now I understand transcending dualistic software is when you transcend the self so you can see things as they really are, because the self contaminates the way you see things. But I didn't understand that at the time. And I was still stuck in the self, seeing myself as Jewish, right? So I remember my friend, he was like, yeah, I think that women should be more submissive and subservient and stuff like that. And I was, he was saying that feminism is bad. And this was like 2010, right? Around that time. But I was like, dude, how could you say, why would you say that about women? White people say it about black people. That, because this guy was half black, but his mom was white. And I always saw that as like, if you have a white mom, I always thought, because I saw myself as having a Jewish mom. So I was like, yeah, and that's why I'm more pro-Jewish, because people know that they're descendants of their moms. So he knows that he's descendant of his mom who's white. So he's pro-white, because you can't somebody knows you can't be sure of paternity, but you can be sure of maternity. So I saw myself as more Jewish. So I wanted, so I saw myself as, and I thought that more Jews were Marxists. So I wanted to be a Marxist, and I wanted to be for race mixing and anti-borders and stuff, right? But my friend, his mom was white, but his dad was black. He was more pro, he seemed more conservative. And I was like, dude, but I was like, so in my mind, I was like, I understand, because you have a white mom. That's why you're conservative. But I told him, I was like, dude, you're saying this about women, that women should be more subservient, but white people said that about black people. They should be more submissive and subservient and well behaved and stuff. And I was like, don't you? So in my mind, I'm like, why would you adopt this conservative mentality? It's not good for your race. Because in my mind, I was like, the best thing for the black race would be to say everything's a social construction, and we should all mix and not, and not conform to generalizations and stereotypes, right? But then my friend was like, yeah, well, maybe black people should be more well behaved and should be more. And I was like, dude, you're just, I didn't say it out loud, but in my mind, I was like, dude, you're just an Uncle Tom. You're just an Uncle Tom, dude. But in my mind, I'm like, I'm doing what my grandpa teaches, transcending dualistic software. But so I remember my grandpa would say that he didn't like the idea of dehumanization, because my grandpa would say we're not humans, because everything is one, and even the idea that there's a human is the idea of a separate self and an identity, where if you're in the flow, you transcend all identities. So my grandpa didn't like the idea of dehumanization. So I was thinking, yeah, instead of dehumanization, this guy is performing deunification. He wants to see men and women as separate and blacks and whites as separate, but everything is one. So in my mind, I was like, yeah, this is deunification in my mind. And I was writing this down. I'm thinking I'm very profound. I'm like, yeah, I'm very profound. I'm following my grandpa's teachings. So anyways, but I didn't realize that I really was not in the flow, and I didn't really transcend my ego. Really, I had an agenda. So my friend might not have been in the flow, but I wasn't in the flow either. Who knows? Or I still wanted to see race mixing, so I had a predatory stance toward white people. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, this guy just has a white mom, and that's why he wants women to be submissive, so he can maintain the white race by making women into baby makers, and that's why he wants blacks to be submissive. But I'm like, no, that's just white. He's basically a Nazi, And my grandpa taught me that, the story of the Fiddler on the Roof, that's conservatism, and that's not necessarily the flow. And the flow is being on the roof and playing your fiddle, and that's creativity. And yeah, so I'm thinking I'm doing what my grandpa teaches, right? So, anyways, so I'm around like 2011. I started reading the Bible every day with my grandpa, calling him on the phone, and I was at UCSD, and I graduated with a bachelor's degree from UCSD. So again, how could I have been schizophrenic if I graduated with a bachelor's degree, right? So I was studying with my grandpa every day, and my grandpa, but again, like, I was confused. I like things about my grandpa because, again, I was a leftist, and some of my grandpa stuff seemed leftism. But I also didn't like some of the stuff that my grandpa taught because I thought he's just a white supremacist. He's a right winger. So I was just confused. I was like, maybe my grandpa's just confused. So, like, I remember there was this redheaded teacher, and she would always rub her hands together, and she was this white lady, and she would talk about how she would go to Grateful Dead concerts and do all this, hippie stuff. And I was like, and I told my grandpa about this and how she'd always rub her hands together. And my grandpa was like, yeah, maybe the rubbing the hands together represents her desire to transcend dualistic software. So it's like, ooh, that's profound. But again, I didn't understand what dualistic software was. So I'm like, yeah, but so she's stuck in the self, and she wants to transcend the self, but she's really like, her like whole hippie thing is like, look how cool I am. Look how progressive I am. I'm a white lady, but really I'm, And I remember one thing that she said was, she was like, I wake up every morning, I don't have to wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and be like, oh my God, I'm white. Whereas that happens to black people and brown people and stuff, right? But I was like, and like one thing I did, and I was like, dude, let's just transcend the idea of race, because race is not, it's a social construction. There's no such things. Let's stop calling people white and black. And like I remember when the kids on the campus would be hold up signs like "fuck racism," "I hate racists," I'd be like, dude, stop doing that, because as my grandpa taught, that's dualistic software. That's emotional, and that's confirming the self. Now I understand that. But at the time I was kind of confused, but yeah, it's confirming the self, being all emotional. And but in my mind though, I was like, yeah, so I transcend, because I transcend that. I don't say fuck racist. I don't say I hate racism, because in my mind though, but in my mind I thought I transcended dualistic software, but really I didn't. Because really the reason why I didn't want that was because I was like, dude, why do we have to always be talking about race? Have your signs like fuck racism, I hate racists. I was like, that just solidifies the other side. You know, that just solidifies the white people. They're like, see, these leftists are crazy. And I was like, dude, don't do that. Just be calm, just be relaxed, and let's slowly, because this was my mind, I'm like, let's slowly just race mix and slowly weed out the white people. So there's no point in doing like fuck racism and stuff. We should just be calm, relaxed, and slowly weed them out. But you're actually doing counter what's beneficial, because now you're making it a big deal and you're solidifying the other side. And I'm like, dude, everyone should just relax and let's slowly weed out the white race. That's the way I saw it. So, but in my mind, I'm like, because I transcended dualistic software and I transcended the ego, and I'm for race mixing, and there is no such thing as race, and let's see everybody as individuals. But really, I did have an agenda. I saw myself as Jewish, and I wanted the white race to be weeded out, and I wanted them to mix. So, but in my mind, so I was studying with my grandpa. So like I said, I liked my grandpa's ideas. He's teaching like transcend dualistic software. I didn't understand what he meant, but I'm like, yeah, let's all race mix. Transcend the ego. I'm like, yeah, let's all race mix. Transcend the ego. I don't see myself as white. There is no such thing as white and black. Let's all race mix. But really, I saw myself as Jewish. So it was kind of like a double talk, or I was speaking out of the side of my mouth. I was duplicitous. I was two-faced, because I remember my grandpa. So I asked my grandpa, I was like, well, Grandpa, what do you think about IQ? This is when I was in college, and I was calling my grandpa every day, and we were reading the Bible, and I would ask him questions like, what do you think about IQ? Do you think that Jewish people are more successful because they have higher IQs? Because in my mind, I was like, really, I was pro-Jewish. But and that's why I wanted race mixing, because I saw white people as the biggest threat to Jews. But my grandpa was like, I don't think IQ is very important, and I think it just matters how hard you work. But in my mind, I'm like, yeah, because you're a white supremacist, and white supremacists are all into working hard, and because they don't want to accept privilege, and they want to say they got it because they worked hard, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's a white supremacist thing to be like, work hard. So I always saw my grandpa's kind of white supremacist. He's always like, work hard. It's all about working hard. And I'm like, nah, but I did like his ideas, because I was like, yeah, I don't like the idea of IQ either, because IQ is used by white people to say they're superior to black people. And I didn't like that. So I had a class at UCSD by a liberal professor, and he was saying the same thing. He was like, yes, it was a whole class on IQ. And he's like, yeah, IQ doesn't matter. And, there's been famous scientists, very, intelligent scientists who did great discoveries who had very low IQs. And, it doesn't matter. It's not important. It's not significant. And I love that class, because I'm like, yeah, because I saw myself as Jewish. And I'm like, yeah, IQ is used as a weapon against black people, because that's the way that white people maintain their, they justify stratification and differences between the races. And I was like, no. So I didn't like the idea of IQ. But at the same time, though, I was duplicitous. I was two-faced, because at the same time, though, I didn't like when my grandpa said, because then I asked my grandpa, well, what about Jews? Why are Jews do so much better? My grandpa was like, well, it's because Jews, because they're a minority, they tend to work harder. Because my grandpa's all into working hard. And so my grandpa, now I understand. At the time, I didn't understand. My grandpa would be like, you can't do anything about IQ. And as an existentialist, because now I understand it's existential metapsychiatry is what he taught, or what he learned under, and what he got his PhD under. But at the time, I didn't understand. But as an existentialist, he wants to be like, you can't do anything about IQ. You want to take responsibility for everything as an existentialist. So he would be like, well, you can take responsibility for, you can't do anything about IQ, but you can do something about how hard you work. But even that's debatable. Even people could say your desire to work hard might be genetic as well. But anyways, but my grandpa didn't like the idea of genetics, because as an existentialist, it's all about how hard you work and taking responsibility. But again, I always saw that as white supremacists too. Like, take responsibility, that's blaming the victim. And if you're doing well, that's applauding the victor. And that's, that again is maintaining stratification. But my grandpa would be like, yeah, all that matters is how hard you work. And Jews work harder because as a minority, they feel like they have an incentive to try to prove themselves. But in my mind, I was like, because I was kind of two-faced, I'm like, yeah, I don't like that idea. And I wanted to kind of think that the reason why the Jews do so much better is because they have higher IQs. Because so again, I weaponized IQ in both ways. In one sense, I wanted to be like, IQ doesn't matter because I wanted the white race to mix with the black race. But at the other time, I wanted to be like, but Jews do have higher IQs, and that's why Jews are so much, do so much better. And I wanted to see it as privilege too. I wanted to see privilege, but really I wanted to see race mixing. So yes, there was a duplicity, and I did ultimately want to see the Jews be the best. But at the same time, I was for race mixing. I was for, because I want to see, because I think as a leftist, I saw the white race as bad, and I didn't like my grandpa's ideas about, like, again, so this is the thing. Like, I liked some of his ideas that I thought, really, I was just a leftist who was anti-white. So I liked some of his ideas where it's like, yeah, transcendentalistic software. I didn't understand what he meant, but I'm like, yeah, let's all race mix. But at the same time, when he would be talking about, like, yeah, just work hard and, just take responsibility. Take responsibility is the most important thing. And I'm like, dude, that's white supremacist. Like, you want the black people to take responsibility for having been enslaved? Like, what's the point of taking responsibility for everything? So I was kind of confused by my grandpa. And I'm like, what are you about? So in ways I thought he was a white supremacist, but in ways I thought, like, I like the teachings, because another one of the example is he would teach that God is not Jesus and that God is energy. And I like that because I was like, that's anti-Christian, and Christianity is white supremacist, and it maintains division between the Muslim brown people and the Christian white people. And I liked Islam because I wanted Islam to overtake Christianity, because I wanted the brown people to overtake the white people, and I wanted race mixing. So I was like, so my grandpa's like, yeah, God is energy. I'm like, yeah, that's good. That's more like Islam, and that's more like Jews who believe that, and that denigrates Christianity. But then later, my grandpa, I remember my friend Jay was telling me, like, that he thought that Jesus was God. And then I said, well, what about the part in the Bible where Jesus says, when someone says good teacher, and Jesus says, why do you call me good? Only God is good. I was like, see, Jesus says that he's not God. But then my friend was like, no, that was a rhetorical question. He is saying he is God. So I asked my grandpa, I was like, what should I tell Jay? Because I'm thinking that grandpa's on my side, and he's on the Jewish side and the Muslim side and the more brown people side against the white idol worshipers, because I wanted to race mix the white people. And my grandpa was like, well, in a sense, Jay's right. Jesus is God. And I was like, what? Because I didn't like that idea, because I was like, oh, well, you are kind of Christian. You are a white supremacist. That's what I was thinking. But my grandpa was like, he's God in that, Jesus is energy and everything is energy. You are also God. Everything is God. But so when someone says that they believe in Jesus and Jesus is God, they're right. So I was like, okay, that's good. So I kind of like that, because I'm like, yeah, that's good, because that is kind of anti-Christian. And so basically I was just anti-Christian because I was anti-white, and I was kind of pro-Muslim, and I wanted to see myself as like a brown person and a black person. Like, I remember I had this ritual where I would touch my head to the ground, and I would count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and I would put my head up, and I did that automatically in my life. So then when I heard that Muslims do that, I was like, oh, well, maybe in like a past life I was a Muslim. And maybe it's because I'm like brown, and it's like a part of me, like I'm more of a brown person, so I automatically do the Muslim thing. Because in my mind I saw myself as Jewish. I saw myself as more black and more brown, and I saw Jewish people themselves as kind of a race mixed people. So I wanted to see Jews as race mixing as superior, because again, I was anti-white, and I saw the white people as bad. As a leftist, I saw white people as bad. And I saw them as the biggest threat, so I wanted to race mix white people. But like I said, really, I was kind of a Jewish supremacist when I think about it. But I was also for, Jews race mixing. But in my mind, I'm like, yeah, well, it's okay, because, then the Jewish genes just go into the black races and the different races. And to me, I saw, and again, why did I see things in a Darwinian perspective? I think it's because I was anti-religion, because I saw religion as white supremacist, because I was a Marxist. So, and I wanted to see things through the Darwinian perspective. So I'm like, yeah, it's okay if some Jews, if I wanted race mixing, but really I was just anti-white, and I saw, and I thought that if the white race, I think it's like subconsciously, I thought if the white race mixed, that would be best for the Jews. So that's what I wanted. That's why I was always so leftist. So I'll continue.